CIA Declassified Episode 1, episode titled The Psychotic Fringe, Tea, Glow, and the Tragic End of the Psychic Cold War. This story is not about satellite photos or double agents or aliens. The story is about the human mind and what happens when the U.S. intelligence community decides that the only way to beat the Soviets is to open a new terrifying front, the psychological battlefield. For 20 years, across multiple different code names, from Scan8 to Gondola Wish to Grill Flame, the CIA and the DIA collectively poured millions of dollars into Project STARGATE. Their goal was simple: turn people who claimed to be psychic into reliable, repeatable, high-value intelligence assets. In the files, which you can read yourself, they confirmed two things. First, that the phenomenon was real enough to warrant the money, and second, that it was utterly, chaotically uncontrollable. Today, we're going to trace the three dominant personalities of the psychic Cold War. We have the scientist, the spy, and the shadow. We're going deep into the files. We are citing the specific declassified document identifiers that confirm everything you are about to hear. Because the truth is no longer classified. To understand Stargate, you have to understand the man who created its foundation, Ingo Swann. When the program started in the early 1970s, the intelligence community was desperate. The Russians, or at least the stories suggested, were light years ahead. They were allegedly using psychics to influence diplomats, alter computer networks, and even affect American missile technology. The U.S. couldn't afford to laugh this off. They needed a psychic capability that could be taught, repeated, and integrated into the intelligence cycle. Enter Ingo Swann. He was an artist, a homosexual, a painter, not a mystic or a guru. He was primarily interested in structure, and he noticed that for all the psychics who could correctly guess what was in a sealed envelope, none of them could do it reliably or explain how they did it. Ingo realized the biggest enemy of psychic ability wasn't skepticism, it was imagination. He termed this enemy the analytic overlay, or AOL. Think of it this way: if a remote viewer is given the coordinates for a nuclear submarine, their immediate analytical brain starts supplying images. Gray, metal, periscopes, torpedo tubes. That's the AOL. It's what you think you should see, but the actual psychic signal, the raw data, might just be metal, massive, deep water, rhythmic pulsing. The AOL is the mind trying to turn a feeling into a familiar picture, and that process corrupts the data. Ingo's entire goal was to teach people how to strip away the AOL. He wanted to turn human perception into a finely tuned, non-judgmental instrument. The solution Ingo developed was called the Controlled Remote Viewing Protocol, or CRV. This was not a meditation. It was a rigorous, sequential, multi-stage process that forced the psychic viewer to approach the target using a mechanical script. We can read the steps right out of the manual. The foundational operational manual is now declassified, and it is the backbone of the entire program. It's archived under the document code CIA-RDP96 007 88R 001 700 210 006-2. Let's look at the first few stages. Stage 1, the baseline. The viewer receives a set of coordinates, usually 8 digits. They don't know what those coordinates represent. They simply write the coordinates down and then write the raw sensory data that hits them first. Example: ocean, massive, man-made, energy. The key is speed and simplicity. Stage 2, the dimensionality. The viewer is now forced to describe the target's basic properties. Is it vertical or horizontal? Is it solid or liquid? They draw very simple stick figure representations. Again, no interpretation is allowed. Stage 3, the movement. Now the viewer focuses on what's happening at the target. Is it moving? Is it stationary? Is it generating sound? The focus is on tactile experience. The entire process was designed to delay the point at which the viewer's conscious mind could impose its story, or the AOL. By the time they reached stage 6, the final analysis, they had built a detailed profile based purely on raw, uninterrupted data. Ingo's approach transformed chaotic gifts into a structured, almost engineered-like system. It allowed even moderately talented viewers to produce data that was, and I quote the final independent assessment of the program, statistically significantly better than chance. It gave the CIA a functional psychic technology, and the man who made the most use of it was a former cop. Pat Price. He's the stuff of legend with the intelligence archives, and he is our second essential figure, the spy. Pat was the antithesis of the typical psychic. He didn't wear flowing robes or claim to speak to spirits. He had a solid, grounded background in public safety. He was a former police commissioner and served on the city council in Burbank, California. Think about that profile: authority structure, administrative focus, and a deep understanding of security protocols. This background gave his remote viewing data an undeniable, hard-edged credibility that others often lacked. He wasn't some long-haired hippie, he was a former analyst operating at a completely new frequency. Pat's accuracy was utterly unparalleled. His most famous and verifiable operational success involved a highly sensitive region in the Soviet Union, a place the U.S. had struggled to get good intelligence on in the mountains, a nuclear test site. The CIA files confirmed the staggering, almost unbelievable level of detail he provided. He was given coordinates, and in his report he detailed the site's basic layout. He described a massive three-tiered gantry crane used to hoist experimental devices. He even gave the precise dimensions of specific underground buildings. But here is the truly shocking part: the detail that confirmed the U.S. intelligence community was dealing with something profoundly real. Pat Price accurately provided the names, ranks, and security clearance of Soviet personnel who worked at the site. Names, people who were only known inside the highest echelons of the KGB. This information was immediately acknowledged by the CIA as operationally invaluable and unobtainable through conventional means. This success, this incredible moment of psychic penetration, is referenced in Stargate success summaries, such as the intelligence report coded as CIA-RD-P96-007-88R-000-100-050-001-9. Pat Price had done what billions of dollars in satellite surveillance and human intelligence efforts couldn't. He had effectively walked into the most secure facility in the USSR and written down the company directory, or at the very least, a roster. But this success came at a cost. Pat was intensely paranoid. He frequently told his handlers at SRI that he felt that he was not working alone in the ether. He believed there were Soviet psychics, an enemy counterpart, actively attempting to jam his signal. He felt he was fighting a war on a psychological battlefield, and that he was winning. And then suddenly, the winner died. In July 1975, at the age of 57, Pat Price died suddenly in Las Vegas while traveling on official business. The official ruling was a spontaneous, massive heart attack. But for the CIA, the convenient loss of their most effective asset, especially one who feared psychic assassination, was too suspicious to ignore. The files do not prove foul play, but the simple reality is that most successful psychic spy in the U.S. government died under ambiguous circumstances while working a mission. If Ingo Swann was the scientist and Pat Price was the spy, then our third figure, Ted Owens, was the terrifying, psychotic shadow cast by the entire program. He's the reason why the government was so nervous about the uncontrolled mind. Owens, who branded himself as the PK man for psychokinesis, was a high-functioning paranoid who was relentlessly determined to prove his supernatural power to the government. He saw himself as a secret weapon, constantly frustrated that the CIA was ignoring him in favor of their structured little protocols. Owens did not claim his power came from within. His core, bizarre, and highly documented claim was that he was aided by non-human intelligences. He called them the space intelligences, or SIs. He described them in frightening detail: 2 insectoid, semi-visible alien entities stationed above Earth in an invisible craft whose energy he could channel. They were his enforcers. He gave these specific entities their own oddly cute names: T and Glow. Owens claimed T and Glow executed his commands, primarily related to weather manipulation. He wrote in his infamous book, How to Contact Space People, that they demanded constant attention, often insisting he send them gifts or perform rituals to keep their power flowing. This was not spycraft. This was a psychotic delusion that was powerful enough to scare the intelligence community, or it was true. Owens' relentless pursuit of government recognition resulted in an unbelievable volume of unsolicited correspondence, telegrams, and prediction sheets sent directly to SRI NASA, and routed to the CIA. He was inescapable. The quantity of this material became so persistent that they are noted in the declassified Stargate administrative archives. While he was never a core operational asset, he was too chaotic, too dangerous. His materials were cataloged under the general category of miscellaneous submissions. We can find references to this overwhelming correspondence in documents like CIA RDP 96 007 88R 001 700 250 002 3. This proves that the U.S. intelligence community was officially monitoring, classifying, and tracking the communications of the single, obsessive, and profoundly unstable individual. Why? Because every so often he got it right. Ted Owens spent years proving he could manipulate the weather. He would issue threats: I will send a drought to Los Angeles if you don't call me, or predictions of chaos. There will be a severe heat wave in Washington, D.C. next week. When the phenomenon occurred, he would claim it was the direct, deliberate actions of T and Glow, punishing the government for ignoring him. Researchers who studied the pattern of his correct predictions called it the Owens effect. But his most devastating claim, the moment that it turned this self-published delusion into a national horror, involved the Space Shuttle Challenger. Owens was in a period of intense hostile correspondence just prior to the January 1986 launch. He distributed materials that warned of a catastrophic, deadly failure on board the Challenger, an ultimate act of retribution against NASA and the government. When the disaster occurred, killing the entire crew, Owens publicly took credit. He stated that T and Glow had caused the O-ring failure to force the world to finally acknowledge the PK man. For the intelligence community, this confirmed that Owens was too unstable and too dangerous. They had to assume that even if his power was coincidental, his criminal capacity for claiming responsibility was a threat in itself. They locked him out. He died years later, bitter, impoverished, and still claiming to be the secret weapon the world ignored. Project Stargate officially ended in 1995, nearly 2 decades after Pat Price's death. The final assessment delivered to the government was clinical and perhaps a little anticlimactic. It confirmed that while the results were statistically significant, meaning better than chance, the information was too often unreliable, buried in the noise, or AOL, or simply too late to be actionable intelligence. The intelligence community ultimately decided that they could not weaponize the mind consistently enough to justify the millions of dollars. But here is the final, undeniable truth confirmed by the documents. The U.S. government spent a fortune investigating the possibility of psychic spies. They confirmed the structured scientific methods of Ingo Swann. They confirmed the intelligence value and suspicious death of the former police commissioner Pat Price. And they confirmed the administrative tracking and terrifying chaotic threats from Ted Owens, the PK man, and his entities T and Glow. The intelligence community walked away from the program, but they left behind thousands of pages of proof that for 20 years the U.S. believed that the most powerful weapon in the Cold War might not be a missile, but instead the human mind.